As a raider, it's natural to want to improve, whether it's the basics like your rotation, best in slot, and consumables, or something a bit higher up like understanding boss mechanics to maximize the amount of damage you can do in a given encounter. That all raises the question though, how can I improve as a raider? Well, I've been playing MMOs for quite a while now, and although I'm still only 2 years into FF14, I do have some insights that can hopefully help you on your journey to get good. There exists 2 websites that I'll have links to in the description. The first one is The Balance. This one I always link back to in any job guide that I do. The Balance is a fairly straightforward site that contains every single detail about every job in the game. Everything from leveling guides to an in-depth explanation of every ability and how best to use it, best in slots, and rotation rundowns, you name it. The Balance has it. If you're ever starting to learn a certain job in the game, this is the place to go. I use The Balance myself, whether it's on my own time or even as research for my own guide videos. In general, when learning a job, I like to take the time to practice my rotation in front of a target dummy beforehand, and that's something The Balance does help me do. So The Balance gives us all the basic information about our job in a very well put together and in-depth way. But what is that other website I mentioned? Well, it's good old FF Logs. I discovered logging all the way back in my World of Warcraft days. Logging is a great tool for tracking your overall progress, either individually or even as a team. Speaking of tools, I'd like to invite you to hit the like button. I put a lot of time into this channel, and liking the video helps me know that I'm on the right track. Also, we just hit 700 subs. So, mind helping us get to 800 maybe? Thank you. Now back to the video. You can choose to log yourself in order to achieve a higher parse. Parses being your overall score based on factors such as healing or DPS compared to other players of the same job on the same fight. I'll be sure to leave a link to either a written guide or a YouTube video by someone else explaining how to do your own logs. But for me personally, I actually do not log myself. I find that when obsessed with achieving a higher parse, I tend to compromise the group. Yeah, sometimes it's just easy to get carried away with parsing, but what are some other ways to use FF logs if you yourself aren't actively logging? Well, there's actually quite a bit that I use myself. There are tons of features on FF logs that can help you maximize your output around certain mechanics, or even know how to rework your rotation and opener around boss quirks. For this example, we'll use P9S's boss's Coquitos. If you go to rankings under Coquitos and select damage, you'll be able to not only see what jobs are performing the best, but you can also go and find your own specific job. Let's choose Reaper for this example, only because I just got done with my State of the Reaper video. Go watch it next. From here, you'll be able to see the Reapers with the highest damage parses. If you click on a certain player, it will bring you to this screen showing you the whole party, and hover over any of them and you'll be able to see what spells did the most damage, how often they casted them, etc. You can also see stats like damage taken and healing. If those stats matter to you, then great, you can certainly look at them, but again, we're just looking at damage, and frankly, if you're watching a video like this, you probably only care about damage anyways. So we have all this information here. How can we apply it to ourselves? And there are a few ways. If we click on our Reaper here, we actually have a few different options. First, if we click on events, you can see an old school RPG style rundown of every ability they've casted and how much damage they've dealt. And while you certainly can look at events, I myself prefer to look at the timeline feature. The same details, yes, but in a much more visually appealing way. Using either of these features will give you a better idea of how other players are opening during the fight. There are a few fights where it might be better to deviate from your normal rotation or opener. On top of that, if there's a mechanic you know that trips you up, fast forward to that mechanic in the timeline and find out what others are doing. To add to that, perhaps the single best feature on FF logs is the replay feature, a play-by-play of every player and the boss's actions during the fight. This way you can see the positioning of the player you're trying to learn from and improve from that. Whether it's positioning yourself to maintain uptime or even something basic like solving a mechanic you're having trouble with. Now that's mostly it, but there is one last little teensy little thing I want to add, and that is just to make sure you're looking at multiple different parses, get as much knowledge as you can, and really understand what others are doing. Now there are a few disclaimers. First, and this is the reason I don't recommend anyone obsess over parses, there are many different factors that can increase damage. Most notably, with these higher parses comes better gear. If you're still progressing or you're on an alt, you will not reach these parse numbers. You can look at item level instead if it really matters to you. There are also different compositions positions as well. Even having one job that's different can ultimately change things like positioning and damage output. But in general, the balance and FF logs are invaluable tools to improving as a raider. By looking to see what other players are doing, you can adjust your own gameplay and strategies, and ultimately learn your job and fights more effectively. Thanks for watching, and subscribe.